All set and all ready?
Yeah, man.
Hey, man. So this is Empire Extreme, hanging out with Todd from Deep Blue Something. How's it going?
And Kirk.
And Kirk.
Hey.
Yeah. It's going pretty well.
So you're all excited for the Never Ever Festival here in Baltimore at Power Plant Live?
It should be good. The hail was a little scary.
Yeah.
So we'll just see what happens.
A little bit.
I mean,
of
anytime anything is outdoor, it's just part of it. So we've dealt with weather before.
So where are you guys coming from? Do you guys do any shows beforehand, or is this just like kind of a one-off?
No, we're doing a little run. We had Little Rock 2 days ago and do this, and then we got Pittsburgh tomorrow, and then we go back home for a while.
Oh, nice.
Just little short runs.
So yeah, so how's that? Doing those little short runs. Do you like doing those versus like the big, longer tours?
I kind of prefer it. You can go out. 10 days on the East Coast and you can cover it all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't necessarily have to, it's just, you know what I mean? You can cover a lot of ground in 10 days and hit a lot of markets. So, if you do it right, it's pretty efficient.
This one is short. This is only 3 shows.
Yeah.
I would prefer, like a 10-day run.
10, 12.
It's just all the preparation to get it going. And then you play 3 shows and you're like, God almighty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's easier to play a little bit more. So I would prefer at least a solid week or 2.
Yeah.
Especially with all the traveling and having to do all that kind of stuff.
Because then you also have the question of, well, should we have just flown in for this? But then you're dealing with backline and I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's always a give and take.
Yeah, especially with flying, especially, like I said, with those one-offs, you never know whether or not bad weather is going to come through somewhere and it delays your thing, and then it's like...
Well, and recently Todd had like a $300 bag thing because...
Yeah, because my base, they decided on that day that my base was oversized. And so I had to pay $300 each way just to bring the base, which I guess I could have not done that, but I didn't know because it had never been that way before.
Yeah.
So you never know what you're getting into with the airlines. And then when you have a backline company that's supposed to have all your, the gear that you would normally use, that's always iffy. So
yeah, it's a super hit and miss.
Yeah, exactly. And then, obviously everybody knows you guys from, Breakfast at Tiffany's. Talk about like doing that song and then just, how many years now later, it's still such an impactful song that everybody knows that song.
Yeah.
Even like I said, it's like 99% of the people who probably know that song probably have no idea that there's a movie called Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
especially the younger crowd now.
100%. They got no understanding of what the song, which I don't get how you could like a song and not really grasp what it's about. But it doesn't seem to matter. People just sing and they think there's a place called Tiffany's where you can eat. And I'm like, that would be a really weird song to write. But
especially,
it's just
like
weird.
I said, especially with the lyrics, he's talking about, what about that movie? Oh, we both kind of liked it. You would think you think if people would gravitate to that song, oh, I like that song. Let me check out this Breakfast at Tiffany's movie that they're talking about.
And
maybe I'll like it or not.
I would think though that there is a certain group of people who are curious that do go check out the movie and they're like, oh my God, I never knew about the movie because the movie is interesting as hell. Like the whole slippers in the refrigerator thing. It's just, there's a lot of odd, little twisted things in there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, did the spikes? Have you ever heard about the spikes of the movies going up because of your guys' song? Like,
for sure. Yeah, like when the song got big, there was definitely a resurgence. Like right in the middle of that, there was like this, platinum edition DVD collection that came out during that. So there were a lot of things, and then Tiffany's, the jewelry store, because of it, you now can go and eat at Tiffany's. Like they opened a little restaurant.
Oh, nice!
And because I was there for this documentary about Tiffany's, and I was talking to him about, I was like, I kind of feel like y'all owe us just a little bit.
Like
can I get my
some
wife
kind of royalty check?
Can I get my wife some earrings or something? They're like, nope. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's had a little cultural impact. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, because I've talked to a couple of bands before. Like I did an interview with a guy from Chicago, and he was talking about like with Little Nicky, where he was like, oh, he plays the record backwards. He's like, oh, Chicago's fucking awesome. And He got like a huge resurgence after Little Nicky came out. People started. So I was just kind of curious of whether or not because that movie came out in like in the 60s or so, early 60s or so. So you got to realize by the time you guys made the song in the 90s, it had already been 30 years. So even the generation of like my generation, like I knew that movie because of knowing older movies, but even generations of that time in the 90s probably had no idea about that movie as well either. They were like, oh, and then they watch it, and it's like, I mean, I wouldn't go as far as saying it's probably my favorite movie. I'm not really too big into the I guess what would be considered like girl kind of rom-coms like kind of like now, but
yeah, it's an interesting movie, but it's not even one of my favorites either. But the title sure sounds good.
And then another one I want to talk, especially because you guys had that that big hit and stuff like that, and being in the '90s at that time when grunge was getting kind of big, and grunge was like the big seller. You guys were obviously away from the grunge scene as far as musically wise. How was that trying to map yourself onto the music world when that was such a big?
It was a little bit weird because that's what made it difficult for radio stations to know if it fit their format.
Yeah.
Because they're like, well, we really like the song, but we don't know if it's going to fit up against Alice in Chains. Because we came up through the alternative charts first. And I understood that, but thankfully there were some bands like Gin Blossoms were around.
Yeah.
Hootie and the Blowfish.
Matchbox
Dave Matthews.
20.
Well, Matchbox 20 was later.
That was a little later.
But so at least there's a little bit of context, but it was hard because grunge was it.
Yeah, I almost forgot about there's some of those what they would call the alternative / indie kind of bands like that.
Toad the Wet Sprocket was
stuff like that. Even like Who's Playing Tonight, like Sponge and stuff like that. There was that
there was some stuff
Candlebox. And
it kind of fit a little. So
but I was just saying because at that time when when you guys were getting known and getting big was that resurgence of that grunge era where that was the king. Everything was grunge at that time. So it was kind of curious how you mapped yourself around that.
We just did the best we could,
Yeah.
But it was all about just if you could get the station to give the song a chance, it would always work. But we played a lot of free radio shows.
Yes, we did. And a lot of hit stores. And
come play this festival and we'll play your song. So we did a lot of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We'll try out 12 spins a week.
Yeah.
See how it works out, and then 3 weeks later, it'd be at 45 spins a week.
Yeah.
You got a heavy rotation.
Yep. And then you go to the next town.
Well, I mean that's the difference, especially at this time music in the '90s and stuff like that versus like now, where now it's like bands can get big on like TikTok or Spotify, all that stuff. Where back then you had to, you could the whole story you were talking about Alice in Chains, like they used to just drive around in their van and just go to clubs and say, hey, can we play? Nope, go to the next one.
Yeah.
You kind of had to do that to kind of push yourself into that limelight.
You had to find a way to get going. Yeah, it's so different now.
It's weird. It's I mean, I understand it, but it doesn't make any sense. Like we worked.
Yeah.
We worked our asses off. We were. For years, we would play every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, come back on Sunday, work on the van on Monday and Tuesday, and leave Wednesday morning, and did it again every week, week in and week out for years and years and years. And, you go to a place and there's 8 people there, and the next time there's 14, and the next time there's 35, and you just work.
Grind it,
You go work, man.
Yeah.
You just go to work. And I remember one time when we were talking to our booking agent at the time, and their philosophy was, well, if we can't get back there every 6 weeks, then we don't need to be going. And I thought that's a pretty good idea.
And we just played.
That area we just kept going, and we would go in one night and there'd be hardly no one there, and then the next time there would be more, and we'd just slowly build it.
Yeah, especially because you guys were from Texas, right? So how was that scene of doing that with the club? Did you guys have Like, you know, because everybody knows about, you know, the New York scene where you have all those clubs, or the Strip in LA and all that. Did you guys have a lot of venues that you could?
In Denton, Dallas, Fort Worth, there were hundreds of venues. And so you'd kind of get established there, and then we would add in Austin, Houston, College Station, San. Then we would go start working north towards Oklahoma City and Tulsa. You know, so we just built this big circuit playing all these college towns. But yeah, the Dallas scene in the 90s was unbelievable.
Yeah, you had the Toadies.
Yeah.
You know, at that time, us, the Toadies. I'm just trying to think of bigger bands. They got some Trippin' Daisy. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, I
them.
remember Trippin' Daisies. Yeah.
But then even the non-rock bands. I mean,
Yeah.
at the same time, Lisa Loeb came out of there, and the
Yeah.
Dixie Chicks, and you know,
Leanne
Erykah
Rhyme
Badu, and all this
Erykah
stuff.
Badu.
And
Yeah.
Pantera.
Yeah,
It was
Pantera,
like
yeah.
it was a crazy scene,
It
and
was
nobody
wild.
sounded like each other.
Yeah.
That was the thing. A lot of the Seattle bands kind of sounded like.
Well, yeah.
Dallas was not that way. Everybody sounded different.
I was
In
gonna.
Austin, they have
yeah.
they have a sound to them too.
I was gonna say,
Yeah,
did you
yeah.
think that made it easier for you? Like you said, in Seattle, everybody kind of sounds the same, so everybody's kind of fighting. Where you have different sound than this Texas guy.
I think it was better that I mean, on the one hand, it would have been probably easier to get a record deal if we were all grungy.
Yeah.
But we weren't, and so it set us apart, you know. So when we started in Dallas, you know, we wanted to sound very different because you had to. Everybody sounded different. And
Yeah.
it ended up working out for us.
Well, yeah, especially because like you were talking about, you know, when you had to go and grind and stuff like that and go to these venues. That's the difference between a lot of these bands now that I've always talked about, where they never really had any hardships. So whenever they get these factory kind of bands that come out, they get one bad show or one bad turn of events, and they're like, oh, and they fight in internal fighting. Where bands who have like grind and had to go through stuff and fought and did all this stuff, they tend to last, and then hence the reason why, you know,
Well, you know,
30
we,
plus
we
years
would
later.
work. There was a really good community too in the region that we were in, and we would work with other bands. Like for instance, Better Than Ezra.
Yeah.
They were in Baton Rouge. They were huge.
Yeah.
But they couldn't pull anybody in Denton. Well, we could sell it out in Denton, but we couldn't pull anybody in Baton Rouge. So we would both piggyback off of each other and do shows in each other's hometown, and to help them get to where they, and it did, it worked. They got to where they were drawing a crowd, and then we got to where we would go to Baton Rouge, and we were drawing a huge crowd. And so we all, there's a lot of bands that we were all working together. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
So-and-so's doing great in Wichita Falls. Let's go and open up for them.
Yeah.
And then we'll give them a gig in Lawrence, Kansas.
Yeah. It works.
Yeah.
And that way you're not starting off just playing to nobody.
Yeah.
You're opening for somebody, you know, and hopefully you kind of have somewhat similar tastes or whatever the crowd does. I mean, it works.
Now-
Yeah, but you're right. Now,
Yeah.
you know, they guys record a killer tune. They make some crazy video that something happens on. The next thing you know, it's viral on TikTok, and
Yep.
They've never
they're playing
played a
their
show.
first
Yeah,
or second show. And it's like,
they're
oh,
playing this,
dude.
you know, they're playing walking festival in front of like 100 million people on their first show ever. This is my first day show. I'm like, how? Like, do my first show? The only people that were there were
Your parents.
bandmates and our girlfriends. You know what I mean? Like band friends and shit like that were the only ones that were there. It's like you're playing to multi-million people and stuff like that. You just sold like $70,000 worth of merchandise. It's your first show ever.
Yeah.
But you know, the flip side of the way music is today too, that is interesting and opportunistic is like I have two daughters, and you know they're like, "Hey, Dad, have you heard of this band called Weezer?" And I'm like, "Are you freaking kidding
Like,
me?"
who doesn't know
Like,
Weezer?
But not Weezer, the Wheatus.
Oh, Wheatus, yeah.
Yeah. Have you heard of this band called Wheatus? They have this song called Teenage Dirt Bag. It's awesome. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, are you serious? Of course I know who they are. But he got on TikTok and it blew up.
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly.
It's literally has given them a huge new life.
Yeah.
You know? And so there is, quote, new stuff to be discovered by
Yeah.
a younger generation that maybe some, you know, if radio play was what it depended on, would not exist.
Let's say they just played last night for the pre-fest for this festival. They played at Rex. We just played.
Oh,
they were
did
they
really?
were the headliners.
Last night?
Yeah, last night at the
That's
pre-show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is hilarious.
So it's kind of funny that you just happened to mention them,
Yeah.
and I'm like, yeah, they just headlined last night for that. Yeah, that's.
I'll see you guys around the corner.
But like even like talking like that, you're going on tours and bringing other people like that. Talk about how it was like to go on tour with like a big band when you got that chance to go on tour with Duran Duran, like playing with someone like that who is already big and huge and established.
Yeah. It was pretty cool. You just see how other people do stuff. Like, I remember when we were opening for Duran Duran, like we had gotten there to do our sound check and all their gear was up on stage. We didn't see them doing a sound check or anything, and then we do our set and we're kind of hanging around and these limos pull up and they step out of the limo, walk right up onto the stage and just start playing. And I was like, oh, okay, like that's a different level of thing.
Yeah.
But you just get to see how people do stuff, But years later, you realize, oh, they probably sound checked the night before, and the reason that they can pull up in their limo right at the right time is because they've done this 10 million times,
Yeah.
and they've got a little machine going, and they know what they're doing. But when you just see it for the first time, you're kind of like, wow, like that's different.
Yeah.
So
you
learn from everybody you see, and you also learn what definitely not to do.
Yeah.
The
You learn that a lot. You're like, whoa, what? This doesn't look like you're good at. Yeah, man.
Yeah, you see
don't
the
ever do that again.
bands that are drinking and partying, before the show. And it's not
Or
going to go
bringing
well.
in a shit ton of gear.
Yeah, bringing in more
like
gear than anyone
Four
needs.
4x12 cabinets
Yeah,
and shit.
going,
You're just like,
what
okay,
are you doing, man?
this is not.
Yeah.
Give me
So-
a combo amp with a 112 and let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny seeing all the different ways of doing things.
Yeah, I always laugh about that too, because like when you happen to mention Weezer, and like I remember on stage, you'd see them like in between a song, like tuning their guitar and changing it. They're like, yeah, we're a real rock band. We don't have somebody 9 million guitars already tuned for us, and some guy just brings them out. We have to do this shit ourselves. Which is funny because you would think a band like Weezer, they're a pretty decently big band, that they would have they wouldn't be doing it. But I like seeing that that raw where they're like, okay, give us a second, we got to tune this. This one's a drop tune song versus
Right.
So I always like that. Say, hey, that's where they would say like, oh, celebrities do it this way too. Like even big bands like that can do it.
But in some instances you think, man, are they kind of showing out? But then you start to realize, oh, that's how they keep doing this night after night after night.
Yeah.
They go in there early.
Yeah.
They go have a little lunch, go back to the hotel, take a nap. Crew's got their job they're doing. They roll up and play the deal. Because if you're, pulling wires and trying to map out what's wrong with this, and you can't, it's too much.
Yeah.
There's too much shit going on, and there's no way to control any of it. So you just kind of have to be like, okay, our crew will have it.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen to the rest of these bands, but our crew knows what they're doing. And when I walk up there and he throws me my guitar, it's going to be in tune. It's going to be awesome. So, but yeah, it's, because night after night after night, slugging around an AC-30 that weighs 70 pounds is not, it's hard to do for 300 days.
Yeah. And like I said, especially when it came to like doing the Duran Duran tour and stuff like that, because you guys' music obviously is pretty parallel differently from Duran Duran, where it's that pop 80s and you guys are different. Did you have any of that where fans were kind of like, I don't know about these guys, or like, oh, okay, I kind of like these guys? 'Cause I know like a lot of times where you see like bands where like you mentioned Pantera, they played with played bands where like they're getting booed, their opening band, and all of a sudden, like, a year later, all of a sudden now they're headlining, everybody wants to see them.
Yeah, no, we were pretty fortunate. Yeah, we never had a really bad time.
No.
Everybody's pretty, but you can also, you got to read the room, So if we're playing with a band that's more rockin', we will adjust our set to blend.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if we're playing with a more pop thing, you kind of lighten it up. You don't want to kick people in the teeth.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you just kind of adjust, because you don't want to be the band that spoils the vibe.
Yeah.
Sometimes bands they try to offend a little bit, and you're like, don't do that. This band's letting you on tour. Be cool, play your thing, and figure out something to make it blend well.
Yeah.
Because that's the job of an opener is to get people excited.
That or like like even out staging, because you don't want to, especially on a big like that, you don't want to be like, oh man, we're out staging the headliners, because the headliners are going to eventually see and be like, okay, these guys are getting way too good and way too big now. Let's just
so we have run into that a little bit. We have run into it, like we've opened for some bands and you kind of feel like you kind of kick their ass a little bit.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you don't
get
get invited to play with them anymore. So we have seen that, but you got to do your thing, but yeah, there have been those shows.
Yeah.
Sometimes at festivals you can get competitive too.
Yeah.
So sometimes sometimes you want the show to blend in, and sometimes you want it to stand out. You just come out just full force because you want to be the best one of the day.
Yeah.
So it sort of depends.
I was gonna say, with that, versus going on tour versus like something like today where it's a festival.
Yeah.
When you change, you're trying to figure out, because usually with festivals, you tend to do your big hits. That's what everybody wants to hear is those hits. But then, there's a lot of us that go, okay, of course they're gonna play all the big hits. But I like to hear a lot of those B-side stuff like that, and people get mad about it sometimes at festivals.
Because you're playing in front of a lot of people that don't know you.
Yeah.
So just because we're headlining tonight, there's going to be a ton of people that have never seen us before. So you want to give them something cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, too, I don't know about y'all, but I've gone to so many shows, and I'll watch a band because I know the hit. Maybe they have 2 hits, and I'll end up leaving and falling in love with some song I didn't even know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of. Like, I'm digging around trying to figure out what record that song's on. Like, like, what is that? I don't even know the name of it, and
And you go fishing around to find it.
Yeah.
That, or especially when you go to some of these like bands that came out in the 70s or 80s that are still touring, and you're like, like something like Styx, all the big songs, and all of a sudden they play another song, you're like, oh shit, I forgot that was a Styx song. Oh my god, that brought me back to my childhood. I remember that song when it came out.
Dimitri's one of those bands, I feel like, too.
Yeah,
it's
that's
like
a good band.
The Road to Me, song, like that's their okay, and you go see them and you're like, whoa, shit, they're a fantastic band. Like, all their songs are great. Yeah. Like, why didn't all these songs get that shot,
Yeah.
But, so I think you got to do what you do, but at the same time, it's fun to kind of ramp it up when you want to. Mess around a little bit, like, let's go.
Yeah. And then, one of the questions I always ask, obviously we're gonna take Breakfast at Tiffany out of the table on this one. But if you could have one song from your guys' band that, you put in a time capsule and civilization finds it thousands of years later, what song would you want them to hear?
For me, I would go with Daybreak and a Candle In. I think that we'll play that first tonight.
Oh,
and
nice.
I just think that if anybody's never heard us and they said, what is y'all's deal? I would go, this is kind of our deal. Like, to me, that song has all of our jam in it, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, for sure.
So that would be my one.
Man, I really love the new stuff from the new record.
Mm-hmm.
And the EP that we did. So like All Make Believe Off and Hide. I had so much fun playing those songs, and I get so excited doing them. Park Bench, though, is another one that is very. Yeah. It is really the essence of Deep Blue. It's a deep
it's
blue
a
song.
different end of it.
Yeah.
Like Daybreak is really kind of dark and moody. And then, Park Bench is a little bit more dancey, but it still has that,
It's got all the elements.
It has the elements.
Yes, all the elements of Deep Blue something. So I'll go with Park Bench.
Oh, yeah, nice. And then, do you guys have anything going on for the rest of the year, 2025 or 2026, that you can actually talk about?
The album comes out in late June or mid-June. I can never remember. They moved the date. And so we'll just be touring to support that for a while. There's talk that the Home album might come out on vinyl.
Okay, nice.
So we'll do kind of some, because it's like the 30th anniversary of that, so we'll probably do some things around that. But we'll just keep playing, and then it takes so long for a record to come out. I was telling them the other day, we really need to get going on new stuff just because of how long it takes. You know, if we had it finished right now, it wouldn't come out for 6 months. So
Yeah.
we need to get on it. So that's going to be my goal for a lot of June is to do a lot of
Start
recording.
demoing and tracking.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean that's like even like before I've always been like that kind of person where it's like you make the album, you bring it up, and nowadays it's so not that singles weren't big back in the day, but singles now are like it's such a big thing nowadays. So many band
It's a way
do that.
Yeah, because you get lost in the stat. Because back in the old days, you would just the album's out.
Yeah, the
Now,
radio would play a single from it.
Yeah, now it's man, if it doesn't catch on right away, you're done. So
Yeah.
you got to release a single and then wait a month, and then release a single and wait a month. You know, and that's what we've been doing for this album. So that our newest single actually just came out yesterday.
Okay.
But yeah, that's what's been going on, and then it's another however many weeks until the album comes out. But you got to have it all done so that you can start the process. So we got to get on it.
You got to bank it. You got to start. Like it's funny, like all the stuff that is new
Yeah.
is, man, we've been doing it for 2.5 years. You know.
Yeah.
So,
We started making that record 2 years ago. And we recorded it pretty quick, really.
Yeah.
And it's just taken so long. But
We've
it's
been like 3 months.
Yeah, but it's
95% of the record was
yeah, and it's just that's the way it is now. So,
Yeah.
So we got to get on it.
Oh, awesome. Well, anything else you want to say to the fans before I let you guys go?
Just thanks for listening. Give our new
Yeah.
stuff a chance. If you like, we really concentrated on the new record to not try to sound current or modern. We just wanted it to sound like a 90s band because that's what I think people expect.
Yeah.
I think we pulled it off. I
Yeah.
think it sounds like a record that was recorded in 1992 and just no one heard until now.
No, nice.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah, the
something about that
production
sound.
is
Yeah.
Just
really there.
simple, straightforward, big.
Awesome. Well, thanks for taking the time.
Man, thanks for
Good
having me.
feedback.
Hell yeah, man.